All right, Jim. Well, we're right here at 10 o'clock, 10 o'clock a.m.
Wow.
People are filing in. We got a really good turnout. I'm letting a bunch of people in on this one. This is a very relevant topic. Let's do the introductions here, guys. Thanks everybody for attending. My name's Ryan Poole. I'm a real estate agent just like you all. Been doing this over 20 years. Also the founder of RealTrade, which is an online marketplace and social media platform for real estate. As Jim likes to say, we're the home of the double dip. So as real estate agents, it's free to sign up. And actually imagine this, you can create a profile on RealTrade and buyers and sellers can contact you directly. So you can get free leads from your listings on RealTrade. I really wanted to disrupt the Zillow model. So we're a different model. We monetize the platform in a different way than sell leads. So it's a great place to sign up, expand your real estate business and then get connected with awesome service providers like Jim on the platform. And of course, Jeff Stewart's great lender here that's on the call as well. So,
Ryan,
check
most
out
importantly, the thing everybody wants to hear, what are the metrics? How many agents do you have on the platform now?
like 3,000, Jim. So we have 3,000 active agents using the platform. I'm getting calls now almost weekly of agents calling saying, hey, Ryan, I got a direct buyer, or I found a seller on RealTrade. It's amazing. And I do want to share this too. What we're going to be doing on RealTrade is we're making the ability for buyers and sellers to comment directly on the listings here in the future. So we're going to be bringing more buyers and sellers to the platform. So check out RealTrade.io. You can just Google.
I'll be okay.
Free. So, but Jim, thanks for attending. For people who don't know Jim, the quintessential entrepreneur, owns his own law business, owns his own title company, New Path Title, and he developed an amazing closing title software called Title Leap, which I love using. It's a great way. It's like a free contract coordinator, and of course, he's my co-host here for this bi-weekly webinar that's designed to bring value to agents to learn from each other as we go through this. As we go through this webinar today on this very, very important aspect of condos. There's things changing, happening in real time that we need to be knowledgeable agents. Don't hesitate to ask. So go ahead, Jim. Why don't you take us away here?
All right, you guys. Before we get started, I want to mention something. We're having a holiday, Ryan, and obviously this is like similar to what we did before. We're having a holiday appreciation party, Sushi Joe, second floor, December 5th.
Okay,
You'll get
great.
an invite. Just a meet and greet, a drink and an hors d'oeuvre, and we're going to have a really special award ceremony that I guarantee you will rival anything you've seen in media much larger than ours. We came up with
Where's it at, Jim?
December 5th, Sushi Joe, Dixie, in West Palm, downtown West Palm, just south of downtown West Palm, December 5th.
Yep. I actually know Sushi Joe
On
really
what
well.
time?
At 7 o'clock.
So we'll send out an invite too through RealTrade to everybody too as well, and Jim, for anybody that attends the webinars.
All right, you guys. So here's my goal in this podcast. I want to deliver you value you can't hear anyplace else. I'm going to give you a couple links to some videos on some basics. But my premise is if I'm telling you something, you can hear other places I've failed. Holiday appreciation, we mentioned that. There are no dumb questions. If you can turn on your cameras, I can see the responses. It gets us through the material quicker. There'll be a question and answer session at the end. You can text me any future topics. You can go to newpathtitle.com and you can click on, let's see, share.
Green, Jim.
All right. You got my screen, Ryan?
Yep, there it is right there.
You go to newpathtitle.com. You can click on 24/7 attorney support and you can text me any future topics. I've got some ideas, but I love hearing from you guys on whatever topics you think are relevant during this session. If we don't walk on each other, I'm happy to have questions live throughout the session. So without further ado, let's see.
As we go through this too, if you don't want to forget your question, you can type it in the chat as well.
Yep.
Put it there and we'll get to them as we go. So awesome, Jim.
All right. The title of this session is 20 Things Every Florida Real Estate Agent Must Know to Successfully List, Offer, and Close Condominium Sales Post Surfside. The subtitle is The Condo Purchase and Sale Checklist. And you guys are going to kill me after I show you this. I hope I see you again. But if you can just stick with me, you're going to get a lot of value out of this. This topic is like a bad horror movie. Once I show you the list, you can't unsee it. It's just going to be burned in your brain. If you try to practice without it, you're going to know you're missing something. We talked about the Realtor Appreciation Party. Okay, so it's November 19th, 2024. The list of forms the Florida Realtors Association has invented or modified in the past 12 months is staggering. That is not an exaggeration. It used to just be a few bullet points. Now it is paragraph after paragraph of new forms. Every time I see a new form pop up in my forms library, I remember the advice of an attorney in law school. I was in the law library late one night sharing the copier. He asked me what area of law I wanted to practice in. I know I've told you guys this story before. I told him real estate. He thought this was a great idea and told me words that are burned in my brain for the rest of my life. Real estate law is the best. The rules in law never change and there are no deadlines. How many feel that's their experience they've had in real estate? Because it certainly isn't mine. Who remembers the seller, just a warm up, who remembers the seller's disclosure rules from our last session? Everybody should know this. Who knows where it's found in the contract? And we're not talking about the seller's disclosure form. We're talking about the 3 rules when sellers must tell what they know. Somebody volunteer. I'll tell them out loud if they don't. So
Johnson v. Davis. If it's easily viewable, right? If seller has knowledge, and if it affects the value of the property.
yeah, seller has knowledge, they must disclose, but also you must have a defect that's not readily observable and materially affects value. If
I'm
one of
gonna
those
quit.
elements isn't present, then the
There's-
seller
I'm
is
in the
not
office, nobody
obligated
here.
to disclose.
I'm in the office.
All right, I'm
Like
eating.
Peter.
There we go.
If one of those elements is not present, you don't have to disclose. You guys, we have these sessions and we talk about it. There's no, like I always say, there's no stupid questions. You just have to know. There's no bad questions. You just have to know the issue. You don't have to know the rule. There is the seller's disclosure section in the contract. It's under the headline, seller's disclosures. If you ever stumble over the rule and you can't come up with it, and you're having a conversation with a seller or a buyer or another agent, go to the contract and look under that heading. I got a couple calls after our last meeting when we did a little deeper dive on the topic, and they were great questions. And everybody practices in this area and should know those rules, like literally the financing rules and the seller's disclosure rules should be on the top of your head. All right. Before we get in the main topic, I want to put something on your radar. It's called pad split. Show of hands if anybody's heard of pad split. Nice. Pad split makes Airbnb look like choir boy music. You know, it makes it look like it's like pot compared to crack cocaine for impact values on residential communities. Pad split is a platform where homeowners can post their property and rent out rooms. And so, unlike Airbnb, these are unrelated people who stay for a week or more and have no ownership interest in the property. Yes, they're not coming to show up and party for the weekend, but they are showing up to hang out, and they tend to be more transient than not and show up for short periods of time with little regard for the community. It's called pad split. We'll talk about it some more. I'm going to do some research, and the laws governing, I'm having a personal Airbnb issue myself, and the laws governing Airbnb occupancies are unclear. I'll get you a good outline on how to advise your clients the best when your clients say, hey, how many beds can I advertise for Airbnb? I'm putting together a good outline for that. And we'll figure out how pad split fits into the mix. But pad split, it's a real problem in Orlando. And it's coming to a neighborhood near us soon enough. All right. Enough scaring. Now we'll get to the good stuff, real scaring. SIRS, milestone inspections and assessments budgeting. This is the main topic. This is a higher level discussion, assuming you already have knowledge of the basics. The mechanics are pretty simple and can be found in some short videos that I provided you links to. This Florida engineering firm does a good job. They are very objective. I've called them about their pricing. They seem to be fast. They seem to be a good referral source for associations that have these issues and haven't complied. And they seem to be a pretty straightforward group. I will warn you, there are some civil engineers that are gouging, right? We have all seen it before. People take advantage. These guys seem to be able to put together a pretty good report on pretty short notice at a pretty reasonable fee. What is SEERS? SEERS are the Structural Integrity Reserve Study, also referred to as Senate Bill 4D or Senate Bill 4, SB 4D or Senate Bill 4D have two parts. There's milestone inspections, that's the first part, and there's SEERS budgeting to cover the costs discovered in the milestone inspections. That's all it is. You don't have to make it more complicated. It's an inspection of the property, and it's a budget that the engineer derives to meet the inspected elements that need repair.
It's a reserve study, just so like, you know, after they do the milestone inspection, they're gonna figure out how much life's on the roof, how much life's on the plumbing, and then they're gonna, you know, from that, give you the idea of what they need to put into reserve.
Let's go this way, girl.
If they say you need $1 million roof and there's 10 more useful years of life, then the SEERS study is going to say 100 grand a year for 10 years. And then they have to figure out if it's a special assessment or a reoccurring assessment. What buildings have to conform? Condominiums and cooperatives, 3 stories and higher, commercial and residential, 4 units or more. What are the deadlines? Buildings 25 years and older, December 31st, 2024, if more than 3 miles from the beach, 30 years and older, December 31st, 2024. So it's a little longer duration if you're further from the beach and a little bit older. And then it's 10 years thereafter.
Alex, you have a question real quick?
Yeah, excuse me. Hi, Ryan. Jim, sometimes I'm sure this brings some confusion, but you know, you have 3 stories or higher, 4 units or more. What if it's 1 story, but 5 units? I'm sure that still applies to the SIRS.
No.
It doesn't.
Each one of these tests is mutually exclusive. So if you fail one of the elements, then you don't have to comply. But here, I'm going to give you a little outline rather than you guys figuring out whether the building has to comport with SEERS or not, SERS or not. You can just ask the question, and that's the magic of this show. I'm going to give you a little checklist that you can go through instead of you guys having to do the determination. And we'll get into why that's so important in a minute. Yeah, it is estimated 50% of all Florida condominiums will not comply.
Yeah.
The Florida legislature is still trying to figure out what the rules are for non-compliers and, you know, the related impact to values. We'll go over that in a minute. What's inspected? The roof, the structural systems, the fireproofing and fire protection systems, the plumbing, the electrical systems, the windows and exterior doors, the waterproofing and exterior painting. Any other item with the maintenance replacement cost exceeding $10,000 that affects the building's structural integrity, like elevated parking or pools on a roof deck or on an element higher than the ground, decorative elements, sculptures, anything that can impact the structure. Anybody have any questions about that? I get calls about that all the time. What does it cost and how long does it take? Pretty standard is turning out to be 1 to 6 months and $10,000 to $50,000. Obviously depends on how the size of the complex and if phase 2 inspections are needed. So phase 1 is they go out and they don't do destructive testing. Phase 1 is they walk the property, they look for concrete falling off the property, deteriorating concrete. They call it, is it spalling? They look for exposed rebar. They have thermal imaging. They're looking for moisture, and they're looking for moisture in the walls, moisture trapped in the plumbing. And they also have some thermal imaging that I just learned about where they can actually take pictures of the electrical system, and they can figure out if portions of the electrical system are overloaded and running hot. So if there are bad grounds and things like that, they can tell like rapidly if properties have electrical issues, and they're finding with this new thermal imaging technology that they're finding lots and lots of issues. And it's accurate and it works, and it's avoiding fires and all kinds of things. Here's the main topic. Here's what sellers agents show sellers to sell yourself at the listing appointment. When you show up to your listing appointment, you want to distinguish yourself from the crowd. You don't want to shock your seller completely, but you want to instill your value to the seller. And you're going to say, here's what I'm going to do for you. Have any other sellers agents that you've interviewed given you the list of what you need to provide at closing? And I think if I was interviewing a listing agent and 6 of them showed up and 5 of them had nothing, and 1 of them had this list and told me succinctly what a seller had to provide to a buyer in a transaction, I would think that that's a very valuable seller's agent. This is also the list you're going to send to the condo association the moment you get the listing. And if you're a buyer's agent, this is the list you're going to work from when you're working with your seller's agent.
Valuable stuff.
All right, this is roughly in the order provided in the contract. So when you work through the contract, there's the addendum, the condominium addendum. And the addendum we're working from is the revised 9/20/24. Very bottom, lower left. Make sure this is the form you're using, and it's the Florida Realtors, Florida Bar form. There's another condo addendum form floating around. You don't want to use that form. This is the form that I would use when you're using the Florida FAR Bar as is. So in order as it appears in the contract, this is the checklist. Please provide, you can copy and paste this and send it to the association. Please, that's how I structured it. So
Just let everybody know, Jim, all the attendees, you're all going to be emailed this outline and a recording of the video. So very important. So you don't have to write it all down, but you will get a copy of this.
yeah, and you can go to the website, click on Realtor Resources, and it's under Realtor Resources and prior podcasts as well. Please provide answers and values to the following. Again, you can just cut and paste this whole thing and use it in a letter. Does the association have the first right of refusal? That correlates to the very first paragraph.
Yeah.
We have had, this is not a new paragraph. This has been an issue in a couple of transactions recently that just boomerang the deal. Do the unit owners have the first right of refusal? I haven't seen that one submarine a deal for a while, but a while back on Palm Beach, yes. What are the regular assessments? How often are they paid? We're going to go over in a minute why this is so critical that you know this number, and it's not just conveyed to you by the seller. If the seller says this is the number, that's the best you can do, that's the number you use. But I've seen buyer's agents kill deals last minute. I've seen buyers kill deals last minute with using clever buyer attorneys on this issue. Are there any we'll go over more of that when we go through the whole checklist. Are there any special assessments? If so, how much and when are they due? Straightforward, nothing magic there. Please provide copies of the board agendas for the year prior to sale. Please provide meeting minutes for the year prior to sale. All that is contained in this section here. What is it, 3C1? 3C1, which are the disclosures that sellers are required to give to buyer's agents. You just get a copy of the agenda and you give it to the buyer's agent. If it's in there, it's in there, and if it's not, it's not. But you've given it to the buyer's agent, and it's up to them.
This is, to be clear too, this is if you're a listing agent and you're meeting with the seller and you want to talk to the association, send them these questions right away.
Well, there's 2 things. Yes. This is the list you're going to show your seller to instill your value. These are the things I'm doing for you that I'm going to make sure every box is checked.
Yep.
And then immediately after you get the listing, this is the checklist you're going to send to the association and say, here's what I need. You know, I represent Joe and Betty, and we're selling unit 1, 2, 3. Please send the following. But I even gave you little captions to put on subparagraphs. Please provide answers and values to the following. Please,
Question.
Here,
Jim, a
Right,
lot
Andy,
of these
please.
associations are not giving us this information, and they're telling us, and as a broker, I've been dealing with this for the longest time. I can't, even my agents are having a hard time. The association says you're not entitled to it. So
Okay.
regardless what the contract says, trying
No.
to get it from the association, or if we turn around and have the seller go, if the seller mentions by any small amount that it's going to their agent for a buyer, they won't give it.
We're gonna go over what to do with that in a minute. And that's a real problem.
it
And
is.
some
We're
of
getting a lot of
the-
questions in the chat on this too, Jim. A lot of agents. So we
Yeah.
want to drill
No,
down on this
I
one.
told you guys, you may not show up for another podcast after this,
Yeah.
but it's
And-
like a
and-
bad
and
movie.
Jim?
Once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. What's that?
Yeah. And what they want is an estoppel,
Yep.
and they want you to pay the estoppel.
Yep. We do have successful agents who have used this list and told me, oh my God, it saved my deal. And you know, it takes the lid off the can early in the deal, and you know who you're dealing with. And you're going to communicate with the association anyway, so why not communicate fully rather than repeatedly, partially? If you're going to jump in the pool all the way. You know, if you're going to start dealing with the association, just tell them what you expect from them. The board meeting agendas and the meeting minutes, that's in the contract. You have a right as an association owner to get it, and they need to provide that to you even without an estoppel. Now, will they do it? Maybe, maybe not, but I'm just saying this is what they're supposed to do. Please, and so this is another caption that you're going to give. Please provide yes or no answer, copy or link to the following documents. If an answer or document is not available, please indicate why. So it's the declaration of condominiums, covenants and restrictions. These are the documents contained in the A and B box underneath number 5, which they have to get or they can cancel. It's the declaration of covenants and restrictions. We call that the decks. Those are the documents that were recorded by the association that show up in title that every condominium is governed under. The articles of incorporation, this is important. They make you produce this. This is not important, and the bylaws are not important. But it's all part of the disclosure package that you have to provide. The rules, no running on the deck, no glassware on the pool deck, things like that, pretty straightforward. Here's a slight change to the new, to the old paragraph. Financial statement, most recent. Annual budget, most recent, was the one that was there forever. And then the FAQs. FAQs are governed by state law. Many associations don't have them. There is a statute that says, here are the FAQs every association must answer and make available to their unit owners. Again, this is the optimal list. This is what you're striving for. We'll go over what you do in a minute if the association won't provide it. Here's one that shows up, and you only do this if you're a seller's agent. If you're a buyer's agent, this is going to get spoon-fed to you from the seller's agent. The common elements section, I cannot tell you how many deals I've seen derailed in 550 Okeechobee on this exact issue.
I've seen deals derailed too.
Including post-closing litigation involving the realtor, because the realtor said to the seller, what's your parking space? It's as simple as this. What's your parking space? The seller said, unit 5, parking space 5. The agent wrote it in the agreement. The seller signed it. Everybody signed it. And they get to the closing, or the estoppel letter comes in, or post-closing. I've seen this where somebody else is parked in your unit, or it doesn't agree with the estoppel letter. If you can get this information as early as you can, put it in the addendum or revise the addendum. This is, put it in the condo addendum, or revise the condo addendum. If you have it in there erroneously, this is going to benefit you hugely. Gia, what's up?
So we had a situation where it was in the estoppel as to what the parking spot number was. And the president of the association said, I have the right to change the parking spot numbers the way I see fit, and turned around, changed the parking spot number to his own. They changed the numbers on the actual parking. So he kept his same number, but they moved the numbers down the actual parking stopper in the front. They changed all the numbers so he could have the spot that the buyer was getting.
You guys, I
can't-
can tell you
You
so
can't do
many.
anything about that.
South 630 South Sapadilla. I can tell you so many horror stories. I'm one victim. It happened to me. We didn't have a parking space in there. I knew the realtor, the agent well. They knew me well. I knew the unit well. We got in there, and sure enough, the association gerrymandered the assignments, and the parking space I got was terrible. It happens, but again, this is best practices, and we have to work backwards if the associations are compliant. But here's a good thing: if you have this document and they give you the information and it's inconsistent with the contract, what are agents supposed to be? Agents are the conduits of information. Agents are never the researcher or inventor of information. We are simply relaying what authorities tell us to our clients. And if you're going sometimes by what your seller says, I've seen plenty of cases where they inaccurately disclose to the agent what the value of the assessments was, and then a buyer's agent came in at the last minute and killed the deal under a rule we call Pine Tree, which we'll go over in a minute. I told you guys, you may never show up for another show with me again. All right, there's a governance form. So here's the governance form. This falls under the inspections and repairs. I don't know why. Now we're getting into the new sections. And this is the new section territory, governance form, and does this. So you want to get a copy of the governance form. It's also available in most agent form libraries. It's also available on the web. Don't get hung up if they don't give you a governance form. I'm going to tell you why not to get hung up if they don't give you any of this. Does the property fall under Senate Bill 4D milestone inspections and structural integrity reserve study requirements? If no, skip questions 16 or 17. If yes, you're going to answer 16 and 17. You're not in the job. You're not in the business to determine whether it complies or whether it doesn't. You're not in the business to figure out how far it is from the ocean, whether it's a 25-year property or a 30-year property. You're just in the business to collect the data and give it to your client and assess value based on whatever data is available to you. If they say yes, then you're going to ask for a milestone inspections report copy or letter stating this has not been completed. Now,
Quick question. I mean, come here the end of this year, December 31st. After that, they have to have it. And then what?
well,
if
they have to, but we're going to go over in a minute why that's
I know.
not going to happen. The many times, I don't want to say majority, milestone inspections report, and then the structural integrity reserve study, or a letter stating this has not been completed. It's worded differently in the contract. I don't know why they didn't. Can you see my cursor, Ryan?
Yeah, I can see it.
I don't know why they didn't give the exact same language on these two issues, but they changed the language up a little bit. I dramatically oversimplified it and made it digestible for buyers and sellers. And then a new Florida law disclosure. Are there any other associations governing this unit? If so, what are the fees? That one question could have saved so much heartache and so many deals prior. Now in the new addendum, there's a disclosure summary regarding nested communities. Does everybody know what I mean by nested communities?
Yeah, there's
And
more
so
than
now
one.
it jams it in the forefront where it's always supposed to have been. I don't know why they didn't do a fee section in the contract itself. If so, what are the fees? Because that would fly under the same rule as Pine Tree, which we'll go over in a minute. They just said, you know, hey, you may be getting fees from somebody else, but never like, what are they? And a seller that's relaying the fees to you might unintentionally omit the second association or third association. And we've seen COAs nested in HOAs and all kinds of stuff. And last but not least, something you won't find anywhere else in the contract or the addendum, are there any violations of the condominium association rules or regs pending against the unit? It just, you ask it, and if they don't want to tell you, that's indicative or something. Or if they say we need to see it in an estoppel, and when you send in the money, we'll get it to you then. But if they do tell it to you, How nice would it be to be ahead of the curve and start getting that door painted? Getting those rocks by the driveway shored up. And we've seen plenty of these transactions lately. I don't know if Tajay is on right now because there's so many people, it's multiple screens, but him and Christian could chime in on practical implications that we've seen of this stuff over and over and over. Practical tips. I would not get into build. So that's the checklist of stuff. There's 20 things. I'm sorry. It's a cut and paste. There's a lot there. But those are the things that are all named in the contract. You're not inventing new stuff and you're not dumbing down stuff that isn't there. It's all there in the form, and that's what it takes to shore up a good deal. That is the reason I would not get into building age, location, and discussion. Agents are the conduit of third-party information only. You know, you never want to be in the position of saying, this is outside 3 miles and this is the year it's going to cut off. And I've got agents calling me saying, you know, well, where is it measured from? And we got to figure out if this is the high water line or the low water line and the intercoastal shoreline or the ocean shoreline. And you just ask the association if they have to comport or not, and you relay that information. You ask the association what spots are assigned to your unit. If they won't tell you, and there is a problem, guess who has a document in their file saying they asked?
Yeah.
That can be worth the price of admission right there. I'm sorry, seller, I did my best to work with your unit. They wouldn't, you know, take me out of this lawsuit. True story, I've seen it. Take me out of this lawsuit. I did my best to get you that information, and we operated on your input, your information. Sometimes your deed, which had incorrect parking space or dock space assignments. True story, you can't make it up. The reason for this questionnaire, agents are relay authority. We talked about this, 550 Okeechobee. All right, so Pine Tree. What does Pine Tree case say? Pine Tree says buyers can cancel contracts last minute if sellers inaccurately state the assessments. Is a nickel too much? No. I mean, nobody's going to cancel. No judge is going to say, you know, an incorrect statement by $1 or $2 or $5 is a material inaccuracy. But certainly when you get smaller value condos, the dollar value of misstatements are going to be leveraged to cancel a contract, and the bigger dollar value misstatements on bigger contracts, you know, the threshold's going to go up. And the goal isn't to, you know, one goal is to avoid liability to your clients, but the big goal is make sure you're going to close. Make sure you're going to get paid for all your hard work. It's a small step to make sure you're going to get paid. I don't know why the new disclosure section does not have a line to input fees. Yeah, I would say that we talked about earlier, this whole section on the right, when they talk about nested condos, in my opinion, there should be a line for fees. You know, if applicable, what are the fees due to nested condominium associations or parents or sibling associations? So make sure those values get in the upper section if they apply.
Quick question: is this Pine Tree? Does this relate if they don't share the structural integrity?
No. Pine Tree is simply if sellers inaccurately, materially misstate assessments, then buyers can cancel the contract up until the minute of closing.
Okay.
And there's a bunch of cases after Pine Tree, but Pine Tree was the seminal case. When attorneys talk to attorneys, they talk about Pine Tree and Johnson v. Davis. They don't talk about seller disclosures and assessments. Some associations are joining trade associations that are hiring lobbyists. There are movements for special legislative sessions to address the compliance crisis, and that's what they're calling it. Some associations are joining trade associations that are going and hiring lobbyists, and then it's estimated 50% of the condominiums will not comply. That's so what in the grand scheme of things, what does that do to your value? What does that, you know what I mean? Like, this is all knowledge that, not, you know what I mean? This is all
like, I mean, yeah, but we had a great webinar, remember, with that big insurance broker. I mean, come December 31st, and this is kind of my concern. Let's say that these condos, half of them don't do the structural integrity test and the reserve study, and it's sitting out there, in the wind. I mean, will they be able to get insurance? I mean, how are the insurance companies going to
How
look
will
at
they respond?
how are they going to respond?
Yeah.
Because if the property, the HOA, if the building's not insurable at that point, then what?
Hey,
Well,
Ryan
yeah.
and Jim, now that you brought up the insurance part of it, a lot of the associations are raising the deductibles for their master agreement. And if it goes to 10%, that's outside the guidelines of Fannie Mae and Freddie
I was
Mac.
just gonna say, lenders are probably tapping out.
Yeah,
Yep.
so you can't even finance in that development if it's a 10%. We have two lenders in the state of Florida, as far as I know, that will finance that. But for the most part, it's going to be an unconventional type loan.
I just visualize another checklist, and
I mean,
I don't want to come up with more checklists, but yeah, it's absolutely condo questionnaire, and is now going to be, the condo questionnaire that lenders send to condos is going to have elements for deductibles if it doesn't already. I've never seen them, but I'm
so well, let's just go kind of go down the rabbit hole. If you're an agent, right, and you're going for a listing appointment and you're going into one of these older condos that are, 3 stories or higher, 25 years or older, and they don't have the structural integrity test, and you're like, well, how is this going to affect the value, when we go to sell if we can't get insurance, we can't get
And
it
that's one of the reasons you want to do this stuff early to set
early.
expectations in your seller. We're going to go over a couple of examples of what's going on in Miami right now, and
Good,
personal
good.
experience on those on similar issues. We have condos that have failed closings multiple times in this office by seasoned agents who didn't do what we're talking about. They didn't do a portion of what we're talking about. And they just keep coming up and they fail to close and they get another buyer, and it's the same issue over and over. This stuff is avoidable. We had one transaction in this office, one of our Tajay was selling, and in the middle of the transaction, a notice came in that the SIRS was available despite prior requests, and the association didn't respond. And the rule is, if it becomes available during the pendency of the closing, then the seller's under a duty to disclose it.
En un Zoom meeting sobre los condominios.
What does failed SIRS deadline mean to a buyer? That's the topic we were talking about a second ago. What's the relevance? What's the significance to the market of these things? What if an agent that specialized in older buildings or wanted to be the specialist? What if I was an agent that specialized in older buildings or wanted to be the specialist in an older building? I'd educate the residents and make me the go-to. We talked about this a year ago. I had a little script. I'd just do a mailer to everybody in the building, bomb the building. Here's what it means. Here's the danger of that. Not the danger, but here's what you want to do some research on ahead of time. Some buildings in Miami south of Surfside, I forget what the name of the road is. Is it Collins, Ryan, that runs right south of Surfside on the waterfront? I think it's Collins.
Collins or A1A.
And so some buildings in Miami south of Surfside have already got agreements to sell to developers. Don't waste your time on these. Ask the association. The associations, unfortunately, the property management companies are not your friend. Why? Because agents are trying to corral owners pummeled by specialists. What's the association's motivation? They want to collect fees from the association to run the association. If the association sells to a developer, that's the termination of a client. And I've got a property in an association that's being bought by a developer, and the association's screaming tooth and nail to try to keep the thing together and not let the sale happen. But the reality is, you have a $400,000 unit and $130,000 special assessment reoccurring for 3 years. 3 years, 130 grand. What's the value of that unit? It's basically valueless. And so those people, those owners are going to look to a developer to take them out. Now, early, there's not going to be much inventory. And again, this is an avant-garde statement, but early there's not going to be much inventory, but a year, 2 or 3 down the road, there's going to be 2 years down the road, there's going to be some significant inventory. So people that are doing assemblages, everybody know what assemblage is? It's when 1 or more units get together to sell to a developer or an investor. We can go over all those rules too. That's a whole nother podcast topic if anybody's
Didn't they
interested.
change that rule too? That now it's like it's higher, right? The threshold.
They're raising the bar, but that's a whole nother topic. My point is to get something in your hands from an agent's perspective. That's a practical practice tool. But just bear in mind, associations are not your friend when it comes to high assessments. They want to play hide the ball. It's painful to everybody. Huge opportunity. Most condo owners that I talk to that call me, they say, we're looking to relocate to a single family home and we heard Port St. Lucie or the Gold Coast is hot or something like that. It just saw Amy Joe's eyes open up. But that's what they tell me. They say, I'm looking to go, we got to get out of here. I've got 400 grand in equity, 500 grand in equity, and we want to go to Port St. Lucie. Where's a good spot? Where's are we going to get away from this madness? Or, some conversation along those lines.
Yeah.
All right.
So let's get some questions, Jim, because we had some as we were going through the chat. Liz asked, this is exactly what's happening to me. The association refuses to provide my seller with any info. What can we do? I'm a seasoned agent. The building was built in 1974. I've asked for the master insurance policy, what are they doing, the CSRS, etc. And now we're 2 weeks away. Any recommendations, please?
Yeah. So the first thing you want to do is take your list and take the responses, if there are any responses, and disclose them to your seller. Or if you represent the buyer, disclose them to your buyer. Full transparency. You don't want to be viewed as the person, the agent that was the cog in the machine, the failure. You want to be in continual conversations with your seller. Hey, I'm trying to get the things that are necessary under the contract, these 20 items, and these last 3 are really important, or the last 2, the milestone issues, and your association won't provide the information. Now nobody can be throwing darts at you later and saying you held up the deal. Now the practical issue is you still need to get the information, but the liability issue is you guarded yourself from potentially buyer and seller attacks with the transparency. And so you want to be the conduit. And so you're going to say to your seller, you got to help me get this. It's not in the estoppel. You want to get the estoppel, obviously, from the title company. We make it available in Title Leap. As soon as it's published, you get a text, hey, the estoppel letter is in the file. And you can click on the link and you can go right to the estoppel letter and see if that stuff's in there. Shameless plug. But you want to be the conduit of information, not perceived as the problem in the machine. So that,
Yes. Yes, Jim, I'm on now. Thank you so
Yep.
much. Just like I'm in a situation where I can't do my camera, but
that's
anyway,
okay.
so here's a situation. So been there, done that. I understand everything you just said, and I appreciate it that you just confirmed what I've been doing. The issue is that my seller is a 90-year-old man.
Yeah.
Most of the family lives out of state. They're trying to get him to be out of state. His wife passed away earlier this year. So it's just more of like, okay, like new stage of life.
Yeah.
I have been cooperating, doing everything. So have they. They even went in person to the property management company and they refused to talk to him and his daughter. So I'm at a stage where like, okay, I am missing out on opportunities because it's a great unit and nobody is helping us. And the other agents, which I've been very fortunate, are savvy as well, like how I am. And they're asking me these same questions. Like, look, it's an older building, like what's going on? And I have nothing to say. So
and you got 2 choices.
yes.
I mean, you have one duty, and one duty is to be transparent to the buyer and buyer's agent, or to be the buyer's agent, and be transparent to your seller all through the transaction. And then the second thing is ask your client in writing, would you like to hire a lawyer to help ferret this out? Or would you like to just let the things take their course? We had an agent buying a unit that had problems, and they had a buyer fall away, and another buyer fall away. Now there's another buyer picking up the flag, and it looks like they're gonna close. They also look like they might be a flipper, but that's a whole nother issue.
Mhm.
And they want to inherit all the rights of the seller to enforce their position against the association post-closing. And it's a situation like you're talking about. They're getting a screaming deal, and they believe that the Sears reports won't reveal serious degradation of the property, so they're willing to buy at risk. They're a sophisticated buyer. They're buying at a good price. But do you know what I'm saying? The
Yeah.
agent did their best to be as transparent as possible, but seller didn't want to hire. Actually, the seller is actually talking to me this morning about hiring me to assist. But regardless, the goal is to be as transparent as possible. Make sure that that you're not the one perceived as derailing the deal due to late information.
Right.
And tell your seller, you know, you got to either help me and go to bat with the association, or we got to get do you want to get a lawyer? Otherwise, we're going to have this problem with every buyer down the road. This is not
Right.
going away.
Yeah, well, we're actually at that point. They're like, okay, well, this happened. They're still not cooperating. And then
Yeah.
and so they're like, okay, so we might have to then get a lawyer to get involved because this is completely unacceptable at this
Yeah.
point. And then the other side of the coin that they're telling them, and they're telling me as well, well, you want that information, you're gonna have to pay the condo questionnaire. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, no, we're the owners. We're the owners. We have a right to know this information.
There's
At
some
least tell us, what stage are you in?
There's some condominiums in Miami that are under indictment, and some that have been prosecuted. And the association is supposed to work for it's like government, right?
Right.
I love when you go to see some city officials or something, and you feel like the government agent is giving you uphill, and they're supposed to be helping you. And the associations are supposed to be facilitating transactions, maximizing values, and they're creating uphill for the unit owners and certainly the agents, to an association. And I've gone with some agents downtown West Palm Beach to the associations and said, look, you got to facilitate our buyers app and get this thing closed. This is ridiculous. And so the answer is transparency, and tell your seller, this might be the point where you need a lawyer, and do it in writing. And if things boomerang,
Right.
you've got that document. Now, that doesn't help you necessarily get the commission, which is our goal.
Right.
I can give you all the best practices and guard your liabilities and exposures discussions I want, but the goal is, at the end of the day, we're not working for free, you and me included, because if you guys do the great job, I get the title commissions, I get the title fees. And so, yeah, it's a symbiotic relationship.
Right. And one more last question. Thank you so much for that explanation. So how do we know if an association is under litigation or it's being sued? Like, how do we know? Is that public record or no?
It's public record, but it can be hard to find. And oh my God, you just came up with a 21st checklist
Okay.
necessity.
Okay.
I totally forgot it. Like, again, going back to
Yeah.
550 Okeechobee, they've got that ongoing issue with tensioners, cable tensioners in the slab. And I don't know if that's
Write that down on the checklist now, Jim, before you forget.
Yeah.
I'll do it right after the
Yeah.
show. I got to go back and find the reference in the contract about litigation, but yeah.
Yep. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. I really
That's the
appreciate it.
value of doing these the value in danger, right? Somebody catches me flat-footed, but also we make a better team if we all work together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that.
Lawsuits, line.
Yep.
All right, you guys. That is, bonus topic. How do you control the closing, and whether you're a buyer on seller side, and get us to be your title agent because you like the stuff I tell you and you like the way we work. In paragraph 20, you can put us in on line 155. You can write the closing agent is New Path Title, and then our contact information, leave the seller paying for title and the buyer choosing title. It's as if the seller chose title. If you write it in, obviously, if the seller strikes it because they don't like it and they write in their own, not a hill to die on. But if we can get a few extra jobs and help you guys and give you access to Title Leap, I'm all about it. And anytime you text me 24/7, I'll walk you through whatever issue you're encountering, and Liz, if you want to text me and we have a conversation with your association about the issues, you don't have anything closing with us that I'm aware of, but I'd be happy to have that conversation and
Thank you.
and get that, yeah, just text me. But typically what happens is agents text me needing support on something and I'm happy to be there. And if the file's in our office, it's a lot easier to go into Title Leap, for me to go into Title Leap, look at the exact issue and then have a really efficient discussion. There's no fee shifting if you're customarily working in Broward or Port St. Lucie, you leave the buyer paying. And if you're working in Palm Beach County where sellers typically pay and you write new path on paragraph 20, the seller will still pay, but you'll be using new path to close. And when you close with new path, you're going to get a crackerjack team.
They do. It's one of the
The
best.
party that chooses title is custom, not law. There is no law that says it's buyer or seller's right and fee. I'd love to know the origin of this custom. If anybody knows it, I have a special super top secret prize waiting for you because I've quizzed some of the brightest title talents in Florida on this topic and nobody knows where that came from. That's all I got for today. If anybody has any last questions, I'm happy
Well,
to
Stephen
follow.
had a few questions here. You know, he said, you know, the association, when he asked for this info, they said only owner is entitled to get this info. So I tell the association, request it in writing, copy me and the title company and their attorney. Even
So if that's the case, you send them an email and you say that the seller's on the email, or you give the bullet check point, you give the checklist to the seller and you draft an email and you say, send this, or you got to get creative. Unfortunately, I don't have a magic bullet for non-compliant associations. And again, to Liz's point, you know, our goal is to get paid, not to do a lot of work and not get paid. So you want to be transparent and you want to be effective. And sometimes effective means you got to tell the seller, look, either we got to live with this problem in successive buyers, or you got to hire a lawyer and we got to drill the association. And some sellers will just say, you know, deal with it and let's just take the decreased value and the reduced pool of buyers. I think I said sellers earlier, but I meant buyers. You got to live with this in successive buyers. You know, buyers, what we see is buyers cancel for a reason. And if the sellers don't address the reason, all the buyers after that cancel for the same reason.
I mean, too, as you know, as a buyer's agent now, because I represent a lot of buyers too, you know, and I have some looking at the older condos. I've sold some in the past, but it's even becoming more relevant now. I mean, now you're an educated buyer's agent through all this. You know what I mean? So if we did get through the process and, you know, they didn't provide these things and
well, that's the
buyer-
list you're going to send to your seller's agent if
Yeah.
you're a buyer's agent, with a few exceptions that are going to show up in the contract that the seller represents are accurate. But you're also going to say to your buyer's agent somewhere in the transaction, if you're not getting this information, this is what we're failing to get. You know, because you don't want to be the agent that gets the call from the lawyer. And there are lawyers that just sue agents now in Palm Beach County, specializing in suing real estate agents. You don't want to be the agent that gets the call and says, why didn't you tell my client about the, you know, blah, 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 whatever the issue is. And you'd love to be able to just grab the document that says, hey, here it is. And I informed the buyer I wasn't able to get it from the selling agent. Although, remember, that is not your duty. So when you get threats from clients or attorneys, God forbid, that say you were supposed to do this, you direct them back to that paragraph in the contract near the signature line that says this is a legally binding agreement. If you did not understand any of it, you hired an independent attorney to advise you on the issues. So agents call me all the time. I feel like I dropped the ball. I mean, Title Leap has a checklist in it of every little thing that has to happen once the contract is signed and we're moving to closing. And agents call me and they say, oh, this bailed me out. I forgot the inspection period was ending. And they get their text reminder about the inspection period or the financing period or whatever. But don't forget, you guys, it's not your duty to tell them of all these things. We do these things for the convenience of our clients and to preserve our transaction and get to the closing table and get paid, but it's not our duty. It's the buyer's duty to understand everything they signed. It's the seller's duty to understand whatever they conveyed.
Yeah.
That, you know, duties and rights are an important issue to pare down, you know, when we start feeling guilty at night because we didn't do something or did do something. Anything else?
Wendy had a quick question. Do these associations still have to fully fund as of this deadline too? So I guess, Wendy, your question is, let's say something did come up on the reserve study or the, or the
Yes,
structure
they're supposed to
recovery
have
test.
provisions for funding. Yeah.
Wow.
And then there's a lot of discussion about where the funds have to come from and loans and things like that. There's still a lot of things unsorted. And there's still a possibility that deadline could shift. And I won't tell you it didn't shift last night and I'm not aware. You know, it's like when we talk about Nar-Sitzer stuff, it's just changing every day. But this is the best statement of the rule and law that I can come up with today. And the best way to practice that I can come up with today.
Yeah.
If you guys could practice, if anybody's ever practiced in California, the disclosure requirements are insane and the forms are insane. It's not uncommon to have a 40-page residential contract.
Jeez. I guess, yeah. I mean, it's
Feel
going to be
your
interesting
pain.
come December 31st of like what, I mean, it's like that's the kind of the drop dead date of how everything happens after that moving forward. I mean,
Well, what we're gonna do is we'll have another show, Ryan, like
yeah.
mid-January about what's shaking down and what's
Like
going
what's
on.
actually real life happening in real time, with these condos that didn't meet these requirements. Because right now they can just write and say, hey, yeah, we don't have it. We don't, respond a letter, we don't have it. And like, what are you going to do? It's in November, and you're.
And so what's going on is there's a big, we did a show earlier in the year when I did a deep dive on all the technical issues, but there's a disclosure requirement of the association to the local building authority, and the building authority has condemnation, and let's just say, hypothetically, there's a building that's fixed income, older people, dramatically behind on repairs. Nobody has places to go. It's a somewhat desperate situation, and the place is obviously falling apart. I would not think it's improbable that a local building authority could go out and look at the place and take responsibility on their own. They would probably hire an engineer at the city's expense, an outside consulting engineer to give an opinion. They wouldn't give the opinion, but I would think it's not completely out of the realm for something like that to happen. All right, now that we completely
Awesome, Jim. Well, let's put a bow on this. Great timing. We're here at an hour. Thanks everybody for attending. This is something that I really enjoyed sharing with Jim. I learned so much. As I said, active agent here for over 20 years, but I implore you to check out RealTrade, realtrade.io. You can just Google it, create your free profile, take the 15 minutes to make your profile. And like I said, buyers, sellers contact you off your listings. And we're doing a big buyer and seller push. We're doing new development, allowing the buyers and sellers to actually comment on each listing. So each listing will be social, and you can log in and answer those questions and then get connected with more buyers and sellers, which we're going to be doing a big marketing push. But I can't say enough. So check that out, realtrade.io. You can just Google it, create a profile if you haven't. And then I do want to give some great kudos to Jim for doing this, Jim, and sharing your knowledge. You're an attorney. You're putting yourself out there on a limb, giving all this information and sharing it. If you haven't, check out New Path Title. There's great with the realtor resources. All the outlines are out there. He has an amazing software, guys, that he developed, called Title Leap, which is like a free contract coordinator. I hate doing deals without it now because it keeps everything right there organized for you. All your drop dead dates. It actually is an amazing. And then the big service that Jim provides, which now I use Jim on every deal, even if I'm representing the buyer, because it's free, guys, is Title Advance. So Title Advance is like a free title search, on the property. So if there's any kind of issues, anything coming up on the property, you're
home closings
you're aware of. And I mean, the big thing is obviously if you're a listing agent, you need to know if there's any, title issues on the property, some kind of crazy IRS lien that this thing can't close. I've had sellers that didn't even know that they had a second mortgage on the property. And I'm like, you guys are gonna have to pay this. There's no equity in this deal. You could be upside down. So like, you don't waste your time on deals that, can't close. And that's
Ryan, you mentioned something about properties with second mortgages, and I just want to, I hope enough people are here and that they hear this, but during COVID, there were forbearances given by lenders, and I'm seeing more and more, and we had one just the other day, it came out of one of the agents in Amy Jo's office, that the property had equity based on the first mortgage. During the COVID crisis, they got a what we're calling HUD forbearance. The HUD forbearance included tacking on a second mortgage for fees and principal payments and interest payments that weren't made during the forbearance. And the first mortgage, I want to say, was $300,000 or so, and the second mortgage was like $160,000 or $140,000 or $130,000, and the second mortgage drove the property into negative equity given today's values. And so when the agent met with the seller said, yeah, we got plenty of equity, not a problem, blah blah blah. We have, you know, no discussion of the forbearance, and it's not the bad agent or anything like that, but the reality is they worked their butt off. And now the property won't close because the property can't close because without a short sale, because the HUD forbearance second mortgage, these things are bloated, you guys.
Yeah.
And this is probably the fourth or fifth one I've heard now, probably about the 10th one I've heard about in the last few months. And we're just going to see it more and more. Do I think we're heading for a 2009 meltdown? No, not at all. But do I think we're heading for a situation where we have to be making sure we're making offers on properties that can close? Absolutely. And only taking
5 minutes, guys, on title advance would have found that out. And now you just, saved yourself how many hours of work? I mean, it's incredible.
and then you can get your title advance from the title advance website, or you can go to newpathtitle.com.
And you can order it on RealTrade. You can order it right under your dashboard. Order a title advance right on RealTrade too. It's a great resource, guys. I mean, it's amazing. And the truth is, you become a knowledgeable agent when you use title advance, because I can guarantee you, if these sellers are, going on multiple agent interviews and you show up with a title advance to the listing appointment, it's amazing. And Jim provides an awesome tool too for a seller net sheet. He does that. We provide that on RealTrade too. But you're just going to stand out.
Yeah. Oh, that's right, Ryan. Another important thing we invented recently, or the first that I've seen in the industry, can you see the closing cost calculator?
Yep.
Our closing cost calculator, I can't believe I didn't mention this sooner. Our closing cost calculator, we added sections for buyer's agent commissions, seller's concession to buyer, and realtor transaction fees, and seller to realtor commission. So it's like you plug a value in there, and it's hard enough for us to wrap our heads around concessions and commissions and what happens to the total due from buyers and total due to sellers. Forget about it. If you're a buyer or you're a seller, you're completely in the dark. Well, now we have a product that you can use in the field, and you can cast light on those things. And on the buyer side,
too, both guys, on the seller and the buyer side,
we put in places for seller concessions and all those little things in separate boxes. And then when you input a value, I've seen realtor transactions fees lately as high as $1,500. So here's the buyer realtor fee. It's done in points. Let's just say a 3. And here's the seller concession. Let's say they're paying 2.
Yeah.
Go over here.
Well, you got to, who's paying title insurance? There you go, seller.
Seller, you go over here. And now you're going to see at the very bottom, seller's concessions, buyer's total estimated proceeds to close, buyer's total estimated cost to close. So it knocks
factored in that 1% for you.
What's that?
Yeah, it factored in the difference.
Yeah, and if you get into the deal and they're only going to pay 1%, and you change a 1 in here, boom, you can update, and then you see the update. All right. So world's first if you guys are aware of another closing cost calculator that has all those features in it, don't hesitate to text me. I'd love to take it for a test drive, but I have not seen one yet.
All right, guys.
All right.
Let's get out there. Let's make some deals. Happy selling out there. We got some more information and ammo for you to use, and hopefully you can leverage that to get more sales, because that's what it's all about.
Ryan, who was that character from Star Trek a million years ago? Live long and prosper. Who was that?
Spock, Leonard Nimoy.
Spock. Live long and prosper, you guys.
I
I just dated myself majorly. I'm
know, right?
sorry.
All right, guys.